I'm just going to explain a few things about what the enemy has accomplished and how we know that it is as I say it is. The enemy masquerades as authoritarian administration, claiming it is establishing equity. It's operating from a blank check that it wrote itself. The basic issue of the blank check is they claim I could have saved John Lennon, and that this is a metaphor for the AIDS attack, and that rather than not talk about the AIDS attack, they say we won't talk about the murder of John Lennon. We'll just send in our collection agency, and the collection agency is a vacuum cleaner that scoops up everything in sight who released the AIDS attack. How do we know that? Well, one of the things we know is that the AIDS victims tend to be almost all of them loyal slaves of John Lennon's mania. So a very good idea was to get him out of the way and make him seem like their messiah so they could be controlled. This gives them their blank check. And this is what the idiots in Seattle mobilized for. It was clearly, by the selection of me, a Japanese revenge attack from Yoko Ono. And she was being given a blank check. Here, she doesn't care about the victims. Here's your blank check of grudge. Go and collect from everybody in the United States. They even swept off our grannies with COVID. And get this, their charm school enemies at St. Louis Post-Dispatch current affairs are a gang of hustlers who sided with the people who did this, just as Seattle sided with the people who did this. So you're saying, well, I sided with them, not me. I'm saying this is you. I sided with them too. So just tell me why I shouldn't. Why you shouldn't side with the people who murdered your grannies and released the AIDS attack and hustling on behalf of the people who they claim killed John Lennon, because I certainly didn't. Yeah, tell me why I shouldn't do that. Well, if you look at Di Montagales' picture in Double Illusion blog, WordPress.com, you see that she's standing outside the World Trade Center with a stiletto. Okay. She was in, her namesake called me the night they claimed John Lennon died. Her namesake Daya called me. Who still has a monopoly over the social work here in Seattle. Okay. So the gubernatorial office has put this drama club together, who was in the 70s in Satanism and immunogenetics, which an ordinary person would be suspicious. Remember the anthrax? Okay, so anthrax, AIDS, COVID, this is their garbage machine. Spitting out their pimpology, rather, because they want to take us to the New World Order, rather than establish ecology in schools and restrain automobile rationing and so on. Can't have that. So they give this blind check to the Axis representative of New York City, this evil woman who, she talks about, there's these Asian women in mental health. She took a girl who has Down syndrome, who was a Korean orphan, had her raped for no reason whatsoever, except that John Lennon wanted to comfort them. And they have all of these spinner beanies on their hats saying, no, we calculated this. This is a moral calculus. It's not a moral calculus. It's a blank check that they wrote themselves. And they can just do things like that. Nobody questions them. Because they say, oh, could have saved John Lennon. That's a metaphor for AIDS. So, So the World Trade Center was a focal point for this gang. Cliff Robertson went there too. circled it in a private plane. So you know for a fact from that the enemy are the people who release dates and who claim they're collecting for John Lennon. That's the paradox that they engineer. Writing themselves a blank check. That's a paradox that they engineered for themselves, writing themselves a blank check. Oh, they're full of operations. Seattle, the Stupids in Seattle are love slaves up